Okay, people, let's talk about Bradford pears. They're just about to bloom out and they're literally the worst. So I'm gonna give you some practical gardening info along with some spiritual encouragement. Sorry about all the dog noises. Real estate developers and home builders love Bradford pear trees because they're cheap and fast growing. The trees also lend an appealing aesthetic to new properties, especially when the trees explode into white blooms in the spring. Thus, in every new subdivision, office complex, or housing development, at least in my region, builders put the finishing touch on their work with a few Bradford pears. What the builders don't seem to realize is that they're planting the vegetation of Satan. Transplanted from Asia, these trees are a blight on ecosystems throughout the Midwest and eastern regions of the U.S. Although the trees are planted largely in residential areas, birds transport the seeds to uncultivated areas where the invasive species takes over native forests and wetlands. Even worse, the poor birds who transport the seeds prefer the cyanide-laced fruit to more robust sources of nutrition. The rancid icing on the cake is the odor produced by the trees in the spring. When in bloom, the trees exude a smell often compared to rotting fish. And this scent in turn attracts beetles and flies, which help pollinate and spread the species. As if the smell wasn't offensive enough, the odor is symptomatic of a powerful allergen that plagues every human in proximity. So my point for today is that you should not plant Bradford pear trees, and you should cut down any that are already on your property. Now, my spiritual point is that we have a choice about what kind of tree we want to become. In Galatians chapter 5, Paul teaches that our old nature wars against the new life God has given us. Our sin is like a nasty Bradford pear trying to invade the carefully cultivated garden of our soul. It wants to bring flies, poison fruit, rotten blossoms, and broken branches. Even worse, Paul says that our sin nature is constantly fighting the work of the Spirit and preventing us from carrying out our good intentions. In other words, those Bradford pear trees aren't going anywhere. They will always be on my street, wafting their stink and spreading those seeds. However, Paul offers us a strategy for overcoming the problem. The apostle indicates that as we cultivate the fruit of the Spirit, especially in the context of community, we grow increasingly resistant to the invasive schemes of sin. Instead of allowing the sinful shrubs to spread, our healthy growth crowds out their advance. The sweet aroma of our spiritual fruit drowns out the stink of sin. As our roots soak up the life and love of God, the roots of rebellion begin to wither. In plain terms, practice makes perfect, or at least it makes us more like the one who is. The more we cultivate our spiritual fruit, the less opportunity sin has to take ground in our life. So today I'd like to challenge you to memorize the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Pray that list over yourself again and again and ask God for a greater measure of each. Or maybe ask God to reveal one attribute He'd like you to cultivate more of with His help today.